like, oh my gosh, they said a whole sentence. It's amazing. And I'm not a speech therapist, but you see those things because they've worked on it in a salient way.
Yeah.
So salient meaning it's like in a way that is conducive to how kids' brains work. And it lights up all those areas of their brain, and then it's true learning in its natural form. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Welcome to Therapy Unmasked. We have Nick Sidwell here, the owner of Ability Innovations. So
hey, what's up, everybody?
he's like the big cheese of AI, of Ability Innovations.
I prefer Jefe, but yeah. Jefe. El Jefe.
El Jefe?
Okay, everyone refer to Nick as El Jefe now.
Perfect.
All the little kids calling you El Jefe.
That would be so funny.
Mr. Jefe is fine too.
So Nick, give us your background on everything. Like, you're the owner of AI. When did AI start? Are you a therapist?
Yeah.
When did you do that? Everything.
Well, I'm a little fuzzy on the dates because it was so long ago. It was only like 7 years ago or so. But anyway, no, like I started Ability Innovations and it was actually just OT Innovations. And so it was just me, and I was in this tiny little room, probably not bigger than the one that we're sitting in right now.
Which is like, what, maybe 500 square feet?
If
that?
even
Not
that,
big.
right? And it was pretty awesome because we had like all kinds of fun things in the room, and I really made it work. And if you looked at the pictures and stuff, like you would see like the superhero theme was a very prominent and all of that. And I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do this kind of on the side. I already had a full-time job, and I just saw kids like after hours and stuff. But as my name got out there, especially to some of the like insurance companies or some of the people on base, for example, they were like, wow, this is awesome. We need therapy services here. And so, yeah, we need the therapy services here, and they were happy to start sending me clients, and that's kind of how it all started, because once that happened, we were able to, like, I was able to, like, bring on some other people to help me, and then I was able to leave my job full-time.
Crazy.
And then
awesome.
we moved to a place that had 3 rooms, and I thought I was, like, Taj Mahal. It was pretty awesome.
Taj Mahal.
Yeah, like I was like, we have 3 rooms, like we've really like tripled what we're doing, and it was really cool. And then, there's kind of this like iffy story about when the other therapists that I was in, they had a separate business. They were looking to kind of absorb my business, and I was telling them that I couldn't really do that. And so they kind of gave me an ultimatum and said, you need to look for a new place. And so I found the place that we're in right now here in Layton. And I was like, if I'm going to do this place, like we're going to do all of the therapies. And we brought on a physical therapist and a speech therapist. And so there was like 5 of us that started here. And the building itself really lent itself to what we wanted to do. And I changed the name to Ability Innovations, and it proved to be super successful in that first year, even though it was like the year of COVID.
Crazy.
And we had to shut
That's
down right in the middle
crazy.
of it. We still were able to like double or triple what we were doing. And now we have upwards of 40 to 50 employees that work with us, and we're able to see hundreds and hundreds of kids every week. So it's been quite the ride.
That's
For sure.
awesome. So we talk a lot about helping kids find their superpower, but we wanted to ask you, what have some of the kids done to help you find your own superpower?
Yeah, one of the first things that comes to mind is that when I came from the school district, I was doing like the typical therapy session where you pull a kid and you work with them at a table, and you have a set amount of activities and things that you want to do with that kid, and then you send them back. And there was always like a therapy plan. And one of the things that I realized really quickly was that didn't really work. That kids weren't very motivated or very compliant with therapy, because
Figures, right?
Right. I mean, sitting at a table is not natural for a child.
I don't think it's natural for
Right.
anyone.
I mean, we're
I would like
trained.
that,
Definitely. We're like trained to do that, but it's not natural.
Yeah.
So the kids were coming in and they just weren't responding well. And I was like, I'm doing something wrong. I've got to change what I'm doing. So I started researching about like play-based therapy. And that's why we do what we do today, because that was this like superpower that morphed into this is how we have to do it, because this in particular is so authentic to children. I can't believe that there's clinics that aren't doing this across the country. Like, why would you not be play-based if you're working with kids?
So
it seems so obvious.
Sorry to cut you off, but like, so Ability Innovations is all play-based therapy and no one else is doing this. Why?
Not no one. There's a lot of clinics that are doing this, but when I am talking with clinics like ours across the country, it's kind of a foreign concept, because what we're taught in school is that you pull a kid and you work with them at a table.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's easy enough to do. And you have a therapy plan that is strict. And to have like a child-led play-based system is a different skill that you have to learn. It doesn't really come natural to therapists. They have to kind of learn what they're doing. But in that process, you start to realize like this is where kids' real potential is, because when they are able to interact in an authentic way that's play, they're able to show you what they know, and you can use their strengths to really hone in on the skills that they need, that they're struggling with. And for them, they don't know any difference about therapy. They think that they're just coming to play. And we often refer to it as, all right, are you ready to come and play with me today?
Yeah.
But really what we are doing is disguising therapy as play. And we're able to mold and shape what the kid is doing to really help these children in a way that is salient to them.
For sure. So you're an occupational therapist.
Correct.
That's like your background and everything. With the play-based therapy approach, how can you give us like a comparison of when you were working in the school districts, you're across the table from the kid, you're working on their occupation, right? Mm-hmm. And now you're in the play-based therapy, you're in your own clinic, I see you all the time, right? You're school bus sliding down kids, you're playing with a giant hamster wheel, right? Like, when I look at it from a third party, it looks like you are just playing with the kids. But I mean, can you help me understand what are you doing in that scenario?
Yeah. So for example, a lot of kids that we work with, it's either like social skills or fine motor skills that we're kind of targeting.
For sure.
And when we sit at a table, we can do worksheets, we can do writing, we could bring little toys that are set up in front of them, or a little card game or things like that. And we can focus on those skills at the table. But when we're with a kid in the clinic and we're focusing on those things, we're starting with something that they're already into.
Yeah.
So we have their buy-in right off the bat. They come in and they're like, let's act like Ninja Turtles. Yeah. And so we can turn Ninja Turtles into social skills. We're like, yeah, you totally beat up that foot ninja, like high five. And that shows good sportsmanship. And then we're like, oh no, here's some problem solving. We got to figure out how to get Shredder. And sorry if you're not a Ninja Turtles fan, and this is an archaic representation, but it's a process that makes the kids already be super involved, and they're able to use what they already know and use the skills that they already have. But then you can focus on the skills that they need just by pulling out what they're doing in play. So if they're already into Ninja Turtles and they come in the clinic wanting to do that, and we do that with them, they love being with us. They show us all these things, and they're working hard on these skills. And it's almost like a role-playing kind of thing for them. But then the parents go, I totally see this at home now. Like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because they see it come out just in their play, but also in their interactions with their friends that come over, or their siblings, or, like some of the phrases that we use in play. Like if I'm crashing cars together, I'm like, oh, sorry, I bumped into you. And if I say that a lot, then kids are like walking through the kitchen one day and bump, oh, sorry, I bumped into you. And the parents are like, oh my gosh, they said a whole sentence. It's amazing. And I'm not a speech therapist, but you see those things because they've worked on it in a salient way. Yeah. So salient meaning it's like in a way that is conducive to how kids' brains work. And it lights up all those areas of their brain, and then it's true learning in its natural form. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool.
That is awesome. I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what kind of really made you want to look deeper into play-based therapy? How did you find it? Like, because obviously it wasn't something you really learned about in school.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about play-based stuff here and there, but I'd never really had that deep dive into it. The thing that started was it's a program called Floor Time, DIR Floor Time. And it's some research that's been done by a Dr. Greenspan.
Okay.
And that's kind of what it all builds off of. He found that when you do a developmental sequence, that's what the D stands for, it's individualized, which is the I, and then the R is a relationship. So when you follow that process, like it's developmental, it's individualized for that kid, and then you're building a relationship, you do that through play, and it has to be child-led to be authentic. And I'd heard about these things early on, but I'd never really put them into practice. And so when I started researching it and then trying it out, it just opened up this whole world, and I saw a complete change in what we were doing. Because this approach, it really lends itself not just to therapy, but just how we interact with kids in general.
Yeah.
And so I can teach these kinds of things to parents, and there's a natural sequence for how you engage with the child and how they learn, basically.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, so we have play-based therapy being almost like a devil's advocate in a way.
Right.
I know there's the debate, and I'm sure we're going to have a whole another episode on this, but on like the ABA versus play-based, and there's all these different things going around, right? And I guess why not to sell play-based, but why would a parent choose play-based therapy over? Why should they choose play-based therapy over a school district or another
An ABA clinic,
an
or
ABA
something
clinic
like
or
that.
anything like that, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it really comes down to what does your particular kid, what do they need?
Yeah.
And what are the gaps that we need to bridge? Because some kids, like ABA is really great for, it's a behavior program. So it's really great for kids that the real essence of what's going on is behavior.
Yeah.
But I would say that not every kid is just strictly a behavior kid. Not every kid has just behavior needs. And in school, it's kind of that same thing. There's a focus about school services that are like, it has to be all educationally relevant.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that we cannot work on just in the schools because it doesn't fit into that educational model.
Exactly.
Right.
So if a kid wants to learn how to ride a bike, and that's really important to them, and there's a ton of skills involved in that, you can't teach a kid to ride a bike at school.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with their
Yeah.
education. And even with ABA, if you're going in and you're working with a kid on certain skills like fine motor skills, we'll say, like precision skills.
And what are
hands.
fine motor skills? Is that handwriting? Is that what are the fine
so
motor skills?
things that go into handwriting. Handwriting is like the higher level skill, but there's things like dexterity and precision, intrinsic movements of the hand, or things like how well they use their fingers in coordination with a tool.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So all of those skills factor into handwriting. All of those skills factor into, can I get myself dressed? Can I do fasteners?
Yeah.
These are things and skills that we need to have in our life, and a lot of kids struggle with it for various reasons. And it may not all be educationally relevant. It may not all be just a behavior issue.
Yeah.
There may actually be skills that they have to learn, and it's not just a behavior that they're not doing it.
For sure.
Or there's other methods for working on those kinds of things that, like if you go to a clinic that's like a hand therapy clinic, they can teach you all kinds of exercises. But is it really an exercise that a kid needs to learn?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
Right.
does that skill actually apply to something, which as an occupational therapist we call their occupation?
Right.
So the activity that they're working with in their daily life might be dressing.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to work on dressing in other places because kids don't really want to get undressed in other places. But when you're working on dressing with a kid at our clinic, it might be that they're putting on a costume. They want to be a fireman in the play or a superhero. So putting on that costume is all of a sudden extremely relevant.
Yeah.
That may not work at school, and that may not work in a hand therapy clinic. They can still work on those types of skills, but it's different.
Yeah.
And if you were to ask a kid, would you rather do exercises, or would you rather do handwriting, or would you rather do dressing up as a superhero or a fireman?
Yeah.
Which, superhero and fireman, they're kind of the same thing. So
Shout out to the firefighters.
Shout out to all the firefighters out there.
Love you. Thank you.
You're the real life superheroes.
So I guess at least for me, I feel like play-based therapy is a relatively new subject in the
Right.
world, right? Like 20 years ago when my parents were raising me, no way in heck they were going to take me to pediatric therapy, right? If I
Right.
needed help with X, Y, or Z.
About that.
No, like it wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing, especially in Utah. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in Utah.
Especially in Utah.
And I feel like there has been this major shift,
Boom.
this boom, so to speak, going into the play-based therapy approach. Why do you think that is? I mean, I would consider you as like a pioneer for it.
Yeah, we're definitely a pioneer here in Utah. And it's not to say that other people aren't using the approach. For us, it's like our main focus. But I think that the reason why you don't see it a lot and the reason why we're kind of pioneering this is because as an occupational therapist, the main occupation or the main thing that kids are engaged in and day out is play.
Yeah.
And we see that, and yet, in school they talk about how you are supposed to be occupationally relevant. If you're going to call yourself an occupational therapist, you have to be occupationally relevant. And it's kind of a travesty that so many places aren't.
Interesting.
If you're, like I'm saying, if you're working with kids, you really need to be relevant to them.
Yeah.
And so as we're starting to realize those things, and there's research to back all of that up, there's a solid evidence base now. Now people are saying, oh yeah, maybe we should do more of this. And they go and get training and things like that as well for their clinic. Or they might have one or two people that are really into that. But I adopted it as a whole clinic. And even our speech therapists, like I love seeing them play a video game with the kid.
Yeah.
And they all of a sudden pause and they go, oh wait, how did you say that? Bazooka? Okay, let's practice that word. And they say, bazooka, I'm going to shoot you with my... And then the kid is saying bazooka, and they're like, perfect, you did it. Let's say it 3 times and then unpause the game and go. And it gives them the opportunity to engage with the kid in a way that the kid wants to be engaged with.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting at a table like most speech therapists would do.
Yeah.
For sure.
And and bazooka may not come up in just in a tabletop setting. So it does in video games.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to kind of see all of the different services, like even like feeding, how they incorporate play into that as well. I think it's super, super awesome.
Yeah, who knew that you would actually be playing with your
Who
food?
knew?
Yeah, and I used to get in trouble for that.
I know,
but
that's
now
what I
now I call it therapy. And it's great. I actually don't do a ton of feeding therapy, but it's kind of interesting when we're looking at the research about how we relate with food. For a kid, you should be able to play with your food. That's one of the ways that you learn about food.
Yep. So all the moms out there, let your kids play with food.
Let your kids, and it's okay for kids to get messy when they're at the table and to wear their food. It's great. So
it's therapy.
It's therapeutic.
It's
That's
therapeutic. Right. Awesome. Let's see. I had one written down. I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, I think there's a lot of just like regular like psychologist therapy. People are like, everyone could benefit from it, things like that. Do you think that every child could benefit from play-based therapy?
I think, most children. There's definitely some kids that, they go to therapy and they don't really want to play, or maybe their play looks different. It looks more like a leisure activity. We've got a few teenagers that we work with, and they don't want to be tossing a balloon around, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
But, their leisure activity might be a card game or making slime or things like that, stuff that they're interested in. And that might not be considered play.
Yeah.
It might be considered like a craft activity or a leisure activity, but it's still within that play realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you could give advice to, let's say, a parent who their kid, and like, okay, let me rephrase that question of how can a parent be able to do this play-based therapy at home? Like, what are some signs that they can say, oh, like this is a good improvement on that, or that's a good improvement on this? How do you see success with play-based therapy? So when parents are doing this at home, they can measure that as well.
Well, I think there's a lot of great tools out there to show like the developmental process of children. We've got a lot of research all across the years about what kids should be able to do at what age.
Yeah.
And some of that fluctuates a little bit, but I think overall, if you're watching kind of where your kid is at and you can identify what they're doing, and whether that's on track developmentally or not,
Yeah.
then you say, okay, here's the next steps. Like, here's the next things that developmentally they should be doing, regardless of what the age ranges say on there. But identifying, okay, I think my kid is more of like in this range, and maybe that's younger, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And then saying, this is the next part of that. Like, the next phase is this, and I'm going to target those things in play. And some of that is like just, I mean, if you think about like DIR, floor time, if you're thinking, okay, I looked at the developmental part, now how can I make this specific to my kid and still create that relationship between us while I'm doing it? That's kind of the focus. And then there was another group that took that same research from Dr. Greenspan. This was Dr. Solomon, and he does the Play Project. And they're kind of symbiotic with each other, but his teaches parents how to engage that process at home with their kid.
Gotcha.
And he's got some great like little videos and things that you can watch that will train parents how to engage with their kids in these simple ways. One of the best ways is like what we call closing a circle.
Yeah.
So if we're trying to engage a kid and we say, here's a banana, and we wait, and if they take the banana, then they closed that circle.
Gotcha.
And then we want to influence them to say like, oh, now I want a banana. So the kid's like, and they reach out, and if you give them the banana, then you closed the circle. And we want those circles of interaction flowing back and forth throughout the play. So it might just start with me initiating an interaction or a circle of interaction and them complying, and then having them reciprocate that.
Yeah.
And then getting that back and forth. So that might be the process, and whatever that looks like. I've done that with something as simple as like peekaboo. And with an infant, that's a very appropriate game, and maybe that's right where they're at. And you can engage a kid back and forth just with the game of peekaboo.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like play-based therapy is a great avenue and a great way to start exploring. Is it a one-step fix-all though?
No, because I mean, you have to have an understanding of kind of the process developmentally, but you also have to have an understanding of what does this kid actually need, and can we elicit this through this method?
Yeah.
So there's some higher level skills, things like behavior or things like executive functioning, which executive functioning deals a lot with how I process things that are happening and how I'm able to kind of mentally process and initiate certain activities.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I have chores that I need to do, it's not very fun anyway. Chores, it's hard to turn chores into a play.
Yep.
Yes.
Play activity. You can do it, but the kid already knows they're doing a chore.
Yep.
Right? So if their chore is to do the dishes,
Yeah.
sometimes play-based is not going to work. Sometimes we have to address that executive functioning of, okay, here's what you do first, do this, then here's what you do second, etc. And we might have to initiate that in a different way.
So I've seen a lot of moms on Instagram, and they give tips on this exact reason. So that's why I'm going to bring it up with the chores. Is I see a lot of videos, and these moms and these parents, they aren't therapists by any means. They're just moms figuring out. So maybe it works for them,
And
right? And
yeah, moms know. They're
exactly
Moms
right.
they're in the
awesome.
day-to-day.
Moms are great.
They're in the trenches. Yeah.
So, but for example, I saw this video, and it was how to get your child more engaged doing chores. And what they were doing is the kid was probably maybe a year old, if that.
Okay.
Like can crawl, start into like wobble walk, right? And the mom was handing them a piece of laundry out of the dryer and saying, "Hey, go put this in the basket." And she was saying, "Oh yeah, it's helping them. They're figuring out how to do the chore, and
Right.
it's helping me out. How do you feel with that? Like, is that a good strategy? Is that
Yeah, depending on the kid, right? Like
Yeah.
if your kid is good at that and they're following like a one-step direction, put this in the basket. Like
Yep.
that's perfect, and that's right where that kid is at. A lot of times it takes like just a pause and an observation to see where your kid is at and what they're able to do, and then
Yeah.
just build off of that incrementally.
For sure.
So if you can see that your kid can follow a one-step direction at 1 year old, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what should you do after that? Like, let's say 3, 4, 5, 6 months go by and the kid's still doing that. Like, what would be the next step after that?
Yeah, so maybe it's like take these two things and put them in the basket.
Gotcha.
So think about like we're just going to build these things incrementally, like
Okay.
gradually. And it might not be following a two-step direction quite yet. It might just be like instead of taking one thing, it might be taking two.
Yeah.
Or take this to the basket and then give me high fives. So
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like that's another
Task.
a task or another direction that I'm giving them. It's not a two-step direction. They think that they're just like, good job.
Yeah.
Right? So it could be building something there, and it's just an incremental approach to this. It's a gradual approach.
For sure.
And it's
Yeah.
and it's building off of their strengths. So I think that's the key with a lot of kids, finding what they're already good at and using that to get to where you need to go incrementally and gradually.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Do you think, I know you mentioned that like this wasn't really something you learned about in school. Do you think that it would do you think eventually that play-based therapy will be taught to OTs in school? How do you think that would benefit?
Yeah, I think,
People.
I mean, they talk about these things because I heard about it in school, but I mean, there's a lot of different ideas. Like you can use play as a motivator. That was taught to me in school. You can use play as your kind of your modality, that your play is like what we're doing. It's play-based. Play is what you're doing to get to the end goal.
Yeah.
Then there's being a playful person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how playful you are can influence how well they get to the goal, but you're not actually focusing just on play. So there's a lot of different methods within play. And then there's a lot of things that are coming out now too with like play therapy. That's more of a psychology kind of thing, or a counselor. They would do play therapy with a kid where they get the kid playing and then they're more open and able to talk.
Yes,
but
I've
that's
seen
Gotcha.
that actually.
it's a little different. It's a little
Yeah.
more different than what we're doing.
Right.
And but the idea is still the same. Like meet the kid where they're at.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel like we could touch on specifically more like what is like speech and physical therapy and feeding therapy I think are pretty self-explanatory, but what is occupational therapy?
Yeah,
What do,
I think
what do
that's
you do?
that's a great question, because occupational therapy is kind of a misnomer. Like we think, oh, we help kids get jobs. Like
Yeah. That's what I thought.
I'm
on TikTok the
I'm
other
gonna
day.
I'm gonna train kids to get right into the workforce.
Yep.
You know,
Start them
and
young.
It's not really that. The term occupational came from way back before it meant like a profession. So it was something that you do that occupies your time in your day. So they're activities that you do. And so an occupational therapist helps you do those activities. With kids, it's not always a rehabilitative kind of approach, meaning we're not teaching kids to do an activity that they have to relearn because they got sick or they got injured or those kinds of things. That's rehab. Usually the occupations that we're teaching kids are habilitative.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they haven't learned them yet. And we're helping them learn these things so that they can do the higher level things.
So play is the child's occupation, so to speak.
So the play is what they are doing. And a lot of times we're actually writing goals for they need to meet this developmental milestone in play skills. Like this is a skill that they have to learn. Like
Give us an example, yeah.
I've got kids that they spent the first half of their life, and I'm talking like maybe they're 8 years old. So they spent 4 years in a hospital bed.
Oh my gosh.
And they never gained the ability to play with toys.
Yeah.
So you give them a toy, a normal toy that they should be interested in, and they don't know what to do with it.
That's
They just kind of
crazy.
push it aside. And there were things that they played with. There was like, I think this kid had a hanger
Yeah.
that he loved to play with, and he would just kind of whip around a hanger and carry it around, and he loved playing with a hanger, but he wouldn't engage with just normal kid toys.
Interesting.
So we had to teach him how to play with toys. And it was really interesting because sometimes that's how it is. Like, kids don't know how to play, or they don't know how to play and interact with others.
Yeah.
That's a lot of kids on the autism spectrum. They don't know how to make that relationship with others and engage with them. A lot of times they're just doing their own thing, and they're okay with a kid being right next to them doing something.
Yeah.
But they're not engaging back and forth with
Exactly.
them. So we have to teach those skills to them. We have to teach them, here's how you interact back and forth with me, and then here's how you interact back and forth with another kid.
Has there been any like moments in your career that you've been like, this is why I do what I do?
Oh, that happens every day. Every day that I work with kids, and even days that I'm doing like admin stuff, but I'm able to see like the impact that we are having with so many families and so many children in Utah. Like, I just go, this is why I'm here. And running my own business is hard. It is not
I
a
would
walk in
imagine.
the park.
I would imagine.
There are so many days where I'm ready to throw in the towel because I'm sick of getting punched in the face, so to speak.
For sure.
Not for real. I have been punched in the face just in doing my job, but usually it's kids, and so it doesn't hurt that bad. But I'm talking about metaphorically, like, there are so many things that are so hard to deal with as a business owner, but when I have those experiences every day where I'm like, we're making a difference for so many kids, and it's beyond just the Nick Sidwell show now. I love that. I love that part of it, that I can influence so many more people and get the services out there that so many families just need, because we just don't have that in Utah. There's only a handful of options, and I want to increase that so that we have what we need, and you don't have to move out of Utah.
Well, I
to
mean,
find
and
what you need.
clearly it's a need because what was it within your first year of actually opening Ability Innovations, you already opened a second clinic?
Yeah, after that first year, we opened a second clinic because they needed it up in Ogden.
Crazy.
And we've had people begging us to come to their area too. And we've had like families that have moved. We've been seeing their kids, and they've had to move down to like Harriman or something.
Yeah.
And they're like, please open something up down here. And they're driving all the way up from
Yeah.
Harriman
Oh my gosh.
to Layton
Crazy.
because
And
they
for the
need
people who
services.
don't live in Utah, that's what?
Isn't it?
45?
Is it
Yeah,
an
it's
hour?
over-
It's
Almost-
over an hour.
almost
isn't
an
it?
hour drive.
Over 45 minutes, yeah.
It's almost an hour drive.
And they're willing to do that because of the services that we give. And it's not to say that there's not other places that they could go, but
Yeah.
sometimes they'll go to other places and they'll be like, it's different. They're not doing the play-based, or it's different. They just have a different focus than what my kid has really responded to at Ability Innovations.
Yeah.
And so those things make me feel good.
So when you're working with these kids, like, has there ever been kids that you've had a hard, like, I guess before I ask this question, how long does it normally take to see true growth and success with using the play-based therapy with a kid?
Yeah, it depends on the kids, but most of the time it's like we're working with these kids for a few weeks to build rapport, because, a session is only like 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it takes a couple sessions for that, and then we really start to figure out the kid, and they really start to figure out like what we're doing, and they comply with it. So after about 3 months is kind of what I'm seeing. And that's, if they're coming once a week, that's a handful of sessions. So after about 3 months, then everything starts to fall into place.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you see bigger and faster improvement if the parents get involved with it?
Yeah, and especially if the parents are really looking for those little clues that what we're doing is working, and they're patient for those first few months.
For sure.
Because I would love to be able to fix a kid, but that's not what we're about. But we have had some families that are like, he's been here for 2 months and I'm not seeing any improvement.
That's
We're yanking him
crazy.
out.
That's only 8 sessions.
Right. And
If that.
we're good, but we're not that good.
Yeah.
But if
I
they
don't know if
hang out
anybody's that
with
good.
us, if they hang out with us for about 3 months, usually they're starting to see, oh, now they're starting to do this, or now I've got them to do this. And they're like, yeah, now I'm a true believer, keep going. Or I'm getting the questions like, what is it that you're doing? Because I see you playing, but they're doing all these things now. How is this working? And then we get to explain more of how the play-based therapy works. And And the parents are like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So once we get that opportunity to really explain what we're doing, it really makes a difference with the families because then, and we're always pretty good about going and saying, here's what we did today, try these things at home, but it doesn't always cement in why.
Yeah.
So when we get to explain why we do what we do and they really understand where it is that their kid is at and where we're aiming for them, and they start to see that, they go, oh yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen so many like happy parents be like, oh my gosh, my kid is improving so much. Like, thank you guys. Like, but on the reverse side, has there ever been kids that don't improve?
Yeah. Yeah, there has been. I mean, it's not as frequent. It's pretty rare that a kid doesn't improve, but it happens. And maybe we're not the best approach or we're not the best fit for certain
Everybody.
kids. Yeah, and that's okay.
It's not a one size fits all.
No, it's not. And we can probably deal with 80 to 90% of kids, but there's 10, sometimes 20% that we just don't fit with. But that's okay.
Yeah.
You can take your kid anywhere that you feel like is really helping them. And that's what you should do as a parent, right?
Exactly, right.
But we know that we're probably good with 80 to 90% of kids.
I would agree. Another thing that I've kind of noticed that I think is very interesting and kind of almost sets ability apart is the relationship that I've seen between the therapists and not only each other, but like working together as well as like the parents.
Yeah.
Do you think that makes a difference?
I do. That's one of the focuses that we've had from the very get-go because I've been to a lot of clinics. I've probably had 7 or 8 different jobs as an occupational therapist, and I've been to a lot of different clinics, not just in Utah, but other places as well. And what I've found is that, it's this medical feel where you go and you sit in these hard chairs and you don't get to see what the kids are doing. The therapist comes in, takes your kid back into the therapy area, and you may have taken a tour through it, but you don't get to see what they're doing. You sit out in those hard office chairs, and then when your kid is done, they come back and they go home with you. But that's how most clinics in the country work.
That's insane.
And we've had parents that have been here and they have got to witness and be a part of couches and family-centered like areas where it's like a living room style. There's coffee tables, there's couches, there's comfortable seating, there's even lamps, and they get to sit there and in the waiting room and feel like they're in a living room. We've done that on purpose. And then we have couches in all of our treatment areas too.
So the parents can come back with the kids.
They can come back with the kids. They can even interact as much as they want or as much as the kid will really benefit from. I've had parents throwing paper airplanes and playing Candyland with us, and it's great.
That's awesome.
The kids like it, or sometimes we've had their siblings come in and help with certain things.
That's always fun.
We encourage that as much as it's beneficial for the kids. And so we've done all that, and we've had these families that have come in to experience that, and they get to see what we're doing and ask questions, and sometimes like with feeding, they even get to eat the food that the kid makes.
That's awesome.
Which everybody loves because brothers and sisters are like, you made cookies.
You made some cake.
It's great. Ew, it has carrots in it. Well, I'll try it anyway. So they get to try all of that. They get to experience it, and they get to be a part of therapy, which I think is key. And then they go to another place in another state. Yeah. And they text us. They're like, I am so broken right now. I am crying because we're sitting in this great place that, is, I'm sure they've got great therapists. We really like them, but I'm in this stark office in these hard chairs. Man. I don't get to see what's going on in therapy. I get a report at the end. I have no real connection with the people there besides the receptionist that, makes me pay my bill. But other than that, like, I don't get to experience anything. And so they're like,
just a factory.
Just thank you so much for what you do, because there is a stark difference.
Wow.
Just an incredible difference in what most places are doing.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to change, because I've seen that. I've seen that a lot.
I think shout out to your wife, Sarah, because I think she does a really good job of connecting with people. And I feel like that's
one of her superpowers,
yes.
right?
Yes, but I really think that's made a difference and kind of set you and your business apart.
And I don't know all of the parents anymore because there's so many of them, but I have known so many of the parents and so many of the families. Like, we are a family-centered clinic.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to get away from that corporate feel. because it's
Yeah.
not about the business. It's about the families and those kids.
Yeah, it's good that you say corporate field because, like, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, but every time I hear the word therapy, I think of, oh my gosh, myself or my kid is broken mentally
Yeah.
and needs to get fixed. Do you agree of like almost feel like the world's stigma around the word therapy, like, oh, you're broken, something's happened,
And you've
we
got to
need
go
to
here
fix you.
to get it fixed.
It's like a broken bone.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's like a mentality that a lot of us have,
Yeah.
and that's just part of the medical profession. But I have to tell you, like, we are neurodiversity affirming, which means that especially when we have families and kids that come in that have neurodiversity issues that they're facing, or they're just, they've got autism or they've got ADHD or they have some of these other neurological disorders. They come here and what they experience, I mean, what we show and what we do is all about, they actually have superpowers. Every quote unquote disability that a kid has, they actually have superpowers. They have things that they're really good at. And if we can harness that and then shape some of those other things through that, that's what we do. And what it means is that there's things that kids need to be able to do in life.
Yeah.
And we can help them with that. But we also are very respectful and very affirming of the things that they already have, that they can do.
For sure.
And we're going to use those strengths because, I mean, where would our world be like if we didn't have people like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and even some of these people that they've come out and they've said, I have autism. And their autism or their neurological disorder or their neurological issue that they're facing is part of why they're so good at what they do.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
if you're looking at it as you're broken and you need to be fixed, it's kind of the wrong view in life because our world is completely different because of people like Elon Musk that embraces his autism.
Yeah.
These kids that are coming up now, they see the world differently, and we don't know where our world's going to be like. We need these kids that see the world differently than the majority of us because our world is changing so fast. We have to have people like these kids that have this ability to see the world differently. We need them. It's part of where we're going in society.
For sure.
Yeah, so it's not quote unquote a fix, but you're almost using what strengths and superpowers they already have to help direct them to make their life easier for them specifically.
Yeah, easier for them and to be able to interact in society efficiently and effectively.
Yeah.
Everybody needs that. And we can work around some things and we can use their strengths and abilities to enhance other things.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for parents who are thinking about looking into play-based therapy or occupational therapy
Or looking to do it at home or...
If you ever want to come and take a look at what we do, even if it's just to ask questions and figure out what more your kid might need, we do a free 30-minute consultation with families.
Yeah.
And it allows you the opportunity to see what we do, but also ask any of the questions. We also have like parent groups and this program coming up that will help families to be able to get some of the resources and some of the ideas and problem-solving opportunities for their kid. And those are things that we do just to pay it forward and just to help families that may not have the ability to actually come in.
Yeah.
So reach out to us and we will steer whatever we can towards you.
So for all the viewers out there who don't know, Therapy Unmasked is part of Ability Innovations. And we're actually coming out with an online course for every single occupation for physical therapy, feeding therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy, where you'll get to learn hands-on how-to videos on stuff that you can do at home. It's going to be super affordable, super cheap. So make sure to check the description down below for all the details on that. It's going to be awesome. And yeah.
Thanks.
And use those superhero masks wisely. And then if you don't know what's going on, you can unmask them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you have any video recommendations or anything you want to hear from us, make sure that you let us know. We'll have all of our social media linked down below. And stay tuned for more special things coming out.
And if we have sparked any questions in your mind, send them our way and we'll answer them.
Yep.
Yes.
Alrighty. That's it.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks.
We'll see you guys next time.